The Great Hall of Cora Prime had stood for 3,000 years. Its walls were made of living crystal that hummed with the voices of a million debates. 12 seats formed a perfect circle at its center, each one carved for a founding species of the Galactic Covenant. Representatives from across the known universe had sat in those chairs, making decisions that shaped the fate of countless worlds. But one seat had never been touched. It was carved from dark stone, smooth and cold. A small blue-green orb was set into its Baka planet with white clouds and vast oceans. The elder races called it the Waiting Throne. It placed it there long ago, when their long-range sensors first detected strange signals coming from a tiny world in the Orion Arm. Radio waves. Television broadcasts. The confused noise of a young species learning to speak. They watched Earth for centuries. They saw humans build cities and burn them down. They saw wars that killed millions and peace treaties that lasted only years. They saw disease and famine and hatred. And they saw something else too, something that made them afraid. They saw humans refuse to die. No matter how many times they fell, they stood back up. No matter how dark things became, they kept reaching for the light. The elder races held many meetings about Earth, the Knoll. Beings of living crystal who thought in pure logic said humans were too unstable. The Melican paths who could feel emotions across space said human feelings were too wild, too dangerous. The Koreth, ancient creatures who had seen 100 species rise and fall, said it was better to wait. Perhaps humans would destroy themselves. Perhaps they would grow calm. Perhaps, in another 1,000 years, they would be ready, so they carved the seat. They marked it with Earth, and they never sent the invitation. Admiral Park. Tay stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn and watched the stars blur around him. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that had seen too many battles. His uniform was dark blue, simple and clean. No medals, no ribbons. He had stopped caring about such things long ago. Beside him stood Kim Hanna, his chief science officer. She was younger, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her fingers moved across her console, checking the numbers one more time. In 30 seconds, they would drop out of fold space. In 30 seconds, humanity would announce itself to the universe. "All ships report ready," said Lieutenant Eubora from the communications station. She was barely 30, but her voice was steady. She had trained her whole life for this moment. Tay nodded slowly. Behind the eternal dawn flew 36 other ships. Some were military vessels, armed with weapons humanity had invented in secret. Others were science ships, carrying the brightest minds Earth had to offer. One was a hospital ship, because Tay knew that hope sometimes required healing. "They never invited us," Hannah said quietly. It was not a complaint, just a fact. Tay agreed. They did not. 50 years ago, humanity had intercepted alien communications. It took 20 years to decode them. It took another 20 to understand what they meant. Earth was being watched. Earth was being judged. And Earth had been found unworthy. Some people wanted to hide. Some wanted to send peaceful messages and beg for acceptance. But Tay remembered what his grandfather had told him. When he was young, a man who waits for permission to exist will wait forever. Humanity had built its own fold drive. Humanity had mapped the stars using stolen data and brilliant guesses. Humanity had prepared for this day with the same stubborn determination that had carried them through ice ages and plagues and wars. 10 seconds, Hannah announced. Tay straightened his shoulders. "Open a channel to all ships." Bora's fingers flew across her console. "Channel open, sir." "This is Admiral Park Tay," he said, his voice calm and clear. "In a few moments, we will arrive at Cora Prime. We were not invited. We were not wanted. But we are here. Remember why we came. Not to conquer. Not to beg. We came to claim what was always ours, a seat at the table. A voice in the conversation. A place among the stars." He paused. "Make me proud." The fold space collapsed. Stars snapped back into focus. And there, hanging in the void like a jewel made of light, was Cora Prime. Alarms screamed across a dozen alien frequencies. Ships scrambled. Weapons powered up. The Galactic Assembly had not seen an unannounced arrival in over 1,000 years. On the surface, in the Great Hall, the 11 delegates looked up as warning lights flashed. Vin, the Null representative, rose from his crystalline seat. His body was made of living glass, sharp and beautiful, and when he spoke, his voice rang like a bell. "Impossible," he said. "The humans do not have fold technology," but the sensors did not lie. 37 ships hung in orbit above them, and a transmission was cutting through every channel, every frequency. Every emergency system on the planet, Admiral Park Tay appeared on every screen. His face was calm, his eyes were steady. He did not smile. "People of the Galactic Covenant," he said, "my name is Park Tay. I speak for Earth. For 3,000 years you have watched us. You have studied us. You have judged us and found us wanting. You built a seat for us in your great hall, and then you decided we did not deserve to sit in it." He leaned forward slightly. "We are not here to ask for your approval. We are not here to prove ourselves worthy. We are here because that seat belongs to us. It has always belonged to us. And today, we are going to claim it." The transmission ended. In the Great Hall, 11 species sat in stunned silence. The waiting throne stood empty. It had for 3,000 years, but not for much longer. High above, Admiral Tay turned to his crew. "Lieutenant Bora, prepare a shuttle. We are going down there." Hannah looked at him. "They might kill you." Tay almost smiled. "They might try." He walked off the bridge, and humanity took its first step toward the stars. The shuttle descended through clouds that glowed with soft golden light. Park Tay sat near the window, watching the alien world grow larger beneath him. Cities spread across the surface like silver webs. Rivers of light connected them, flowing with traffic that moved too fast to see. Cora Prime was beautiful. It was also very old. Humanity was walking into a room where everyone else had been talking for thousands of years. Lieutenant Ubora sat across from him, her hands resting on a simple tablet. No weapons, no armor. Tay had ordered it that way. If the aliens wanted to kill them, guns would not save them. But showing up armed would prove every fear the elder races had about humanity. "They are tracking us," Bora said, reading her tablet. 14 defense platforms have locked onto our shuttle. "Let them," Tay replied. "We did not come here to fight." The shuttle landed on a platform of white stone. Strange plants with silver leaves lined the walkway. The air smelled clean, almost sweet, like flowers after rain. 2 figures waited for them at the end of the path. The first was Vin, the Null delegate. His body was made of crystal that caught the light and split it into rainbows. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, and when he moved, he made a soft chiming sound. His face had no features that humans could read, but his posture was stiff. Angry, perhaps, or afraid. The second was Sola, representative of the Melek. She was smaller, almost human-sized, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Her eyes were large and dark, and they fixed on Tay the moment he stepped off the shuttle. The Melek were empaths. They could feel emotions the way humans felt heat or cold. Tay knew she was reading him right now, searching for rage or madness or cruelty. He let her look. He had nothing to hide. "You should not be here," Ben said. His voice was sharp and cold. "You were never summoned. You have no voice in this place." Tay walked toward them without stopping. Bora followed 2 steps behind. "We did not wait for a summons," he said. "We stopped waiting 50 years ago. This is a violation of Covenant law," Ben continued. "Your ships will be seized. Your people will be detained. You will answer for this intrusion." Tay stopped in front of the crystal being. He had to look up to meet what might have been eyes. 3,000 years, he said quietly. "You watched us for 3,000 years. You saw us struggle. You saw us suffer. You saw us die by the millions in wars and plagues and famines. And you did nothing," we observed, Ven said. "It is not our place to interfere with developing species. You built a seat for us?" Tay's voice did not rise, but something in it made the air feel heavier. "You carved it from stone and marked it with our world. You prepared a place for humanity in your great hall. And then you looked at us and decided we were not good enough to fill it. Sola made a soft sound. Her colors shifted toward blue and purple. Your emotions, she whispered. They are. Not what I expected? What did you expect? Bora asked. Rage, hatred, the desire for revenge. Sola tilted her head, studying Tay like he was a puzzle she could not solve. But you are not angry. You are sad. Tay nodded slowly. We know what you saw when you looked at us. Our wars, our cruelty, the terrible things we did to each other. You were right to be concerned. Humanity has done great evil. Paused. But you only saw half the story. He gestured to Bora, who lifted her tablet and pressed a button. High above, on the eternal dawn, Kim Hannah received the signal. She had been waiting for this moment. Her fingers moved across her console, and a massive data stream began flowing down to the planet. Every screen in the Great Hall flickered. Every display on Cora Prime showed the same images. Humanity's history. All of it. The elder races saw the wars, yes. But now, they also saw the soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to save their friends. They saw the nurses who worked until they collapsed, trying to save strangers. They saw firefighters running into burning buildings and doctors, fighting diseases that killed them too. They saw the genocides. But they also saw the people who hid refugees in their homes, knowing they would be killed if they were caught. They saw the judges who stood up to tyrants. They saw the ordinary people who said no when everyone else said yes. They saw the famines. But they also saw the farmers who shared their last grain with neighbors. They saw the aid workers who crossed oceans to feed children they would never meet again. They saw the scientists who spent their lives creating crops that could grow in dead soil, image after image, story after story. The full weight of human history, light and dark together. Sola gasped. Her colors exploded into patterns no one had ever seen before. How do you survive it? She breathed. How do you carry so much pain and still hope? Because hope is all we have, Bora said softly. It is the only thing that has ever kept us going. Then stood perfectly still. His crystal body caught the images and reflected them across the walls. This changes nothing, he said. But his voice was less certain now. You are still violent. Still dangerous? Yes, Tay agreed. We are. We have always been dangerous. But not because we love destruction. He stepped closer to the crystal being. We are dangerous because we refuse to give up. We are dangerous because we will fight for what we love until our last breath. We are dangerous because when the universe tells us we cannot survive, we survive anyway. He looked at both of them, the being of crystal and the being of shifting colors. You feared what we might become, he said. You never asked what we chose to be. Sola moved toward him. Her hand reached out, almost touching his chest. You truly believe you deserve a place here. I believe we earned it, Tay replied. Every plague we survived, every war we ended, every single time we fell down and got back up, we did not need your help. We did not need your guidance. We built ourselves from nothing, and we are still building. He turned and began walking toward the Great Hall. Now take us to our seat. After a long moment, Ven and Sola followed. The Great Hall was larger than any building on Earth. Its ceiling disappeared into golden mist. Its walls pulsed with soft light that seemed almost alive. 11 seats formed a broken circle, each one occupied by a being stranger than the last. Creatures of crystal and shadow and light. Beings with too many eyes or no eyes at all. Forms that shifted and changed with every breath, and in the center of them all stood the waiting throne. Dark stone. Blue-green orb. Empty for 3,000 years. Admiral Park-Tay walked into the chamber alone. His crew waited outside Bora, Hannah, and the others. This part he had to do himself. The human has demanded a seat, Ven announced, his voice ringing through the hall. He claims it belongs to his species by right. A low murmur passed through the delegates. Some laughed. Others made sounds that might have been anger or surprise. One creature, a Korath elder, whose body was wrapped in flowing darkness, leaned forward with interest. There is a way, the Korath said. Its voice was like wind through dead leaves. The ancient protocol. The proving. If the human wishes to claim what was never given, he must earn it. The proving has not been invoked in 800 years, Sola said. Her colors had settled into worried shades of gray. It was designed to break species, not welcome them. Then it should pose no problem, another delegate said. This one was Trell, a being made entirely of light. If humans are as strong as this one claims, they will survive. If not, we will have our answer. Tay stepped forward. What is the proving? Ven turned to face him. 3 challenges. 3 tests of your species' worth. If you pass all 3, the seed is yours. If you fail even one, your fleet will be escorted from this system, and humanity will not be permitted to return for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Tay thought about the people waiting on the ships above. The scientists. The doctors. The soldiers. They had risked everything to come here. He could not fail them, except, he said. The first challenge began immediately. A door opened in the wall, and Commander O'Hain stepped through. He was a military man, built like a soldier, with scars on his hands and calm eyes. Tay had chosen him for this mission because he was the finest tactical mind humanity had ever produced. Strategic warfare, Ven announced. The human commander will face the Null Grand Tactician in a simulated battle. The scenario will be generated at random. Victory is the only acceptable outcome. Huon was led to a chamber where light itself became solid. Ships formed from nothing, fleets of vessels hovering in an artificial void. Across from him, a Null strategist took position. The Null had been fighting wars for 10,000 years. They had never lost a simulated battle to any species. The scenario appeared: defense of a civilian station against overwhelming enemy forces. The Null moved first, positioning ships with mathematical precision. Every angle was calculated. Every defense was optimal. It was, by pure logic, unwinnable for the attacker. Hian studied the board for 30 seconds. Then he did something the Null had never seen. He surrendered his fleet. The Null strategist paused. This is not a valid move. I am ordering my ships to power down and drift, Hian said calmly. They are no longer combat vessels. They are debris. Simulation did not know how to respond. Hian's ships went dark, floating lifelessly toward the enemy formation. The Null ignored them. They were no longer threats. But hidden among the dead ships was a single transport carrying 40 soldiers. While the Null fleet watched the station. The transport drifted close to the enemy command ship. The soldiers boarded. They took the bridge. And in 11 minutes, the battle was over. Sacrifice, Hyun said quietly. We do not calculate acceptable losses. We choose them. The Null strategist stood in silence. He had no response. The second challenge came next. Dr. Yoon Mina was brought before Sola and a council of Melic empaths. She was a trauma surgeon who had worked in 3 war zones on Earth. Her hands had held dying children. Her eyes had seen things that would break most people. Empathic resonance, Sola announced. We will examine this human's emotional core. We will see what lies beneath the surface. Mina sat quietly as the Melic reached into her mind. They expected chaos. They expected violence and fear and darkness. And they found those things, scars of pain that ran deep. But beneath the scars, they found something else. Hope. Burning like a small flame that refused to go out. Every patient she had lost made the flame flicker. Every child she could not save nearly put it out. But every morning, Mina woke up and chose to light it again. Sola pulled back, her colors shifting to pure white. Tears fell from her dark eyes, an expression of overwhelming emotion among her kind. How? She whispered. How do you carry so much darkness and still find light? Mina smiled sadly. Because someone has to. The third challenge was the simplest and the hardest. Fleet Captain Beekwu stood before the full assembly. He was an older man with white hair and a gentle face. He had commanded ships for 30 years. He had lost friends. He had made impossible choices. And now he faced the final question. What does your species value above survival? The Korath elder asked. What would humanity die for? Some species valued knowledge. Others valued order. A few valued power above all else. The answer to this question revealed the soul of a civilization. Wu did not hesitate. Each other. The hall went quiet. Explain, Ven demanded. We are not a perfect species, Wu said. We fight. We fail. We hurt the people we love. But when everything falls apart, when the floods come, when the fires burn, when the enemies arrive, we run toward each other, not away. A mother will die for her child. A soldier will die for a stranger. A doctor will work until her heart stops trying to save people she has never met. His voice grew thick with emotion. We have always chosen each other, even when we failed to show it, even when we forgot. In the end, we always remember. The Korath elder leaned back. Its darkness swirled with colors no human could name. Unprecedented, it murmured. Truly unprecedented. Ven conferred with the other delegates. The hall buzzed with whispered conversations in a dozen languages. Finally, the crystal being turned back to face Tay. You have passed the proving, he said. There was something new in his voice, something that might have been respect. The seat is yours. Tay bowed his head slightly. We did not come here to prove ourselves to you. We came here to show you who we already were. He walked toward the waiting throne. 3,000 years of emptiness were about to end. But before he could sit, alarms began to scream. The explosion tore through the great hall like a living thing. Fire and light and screaming metal. The walls that had stood for 3,000 years cracked and groaned. Delegates were thrown from their seats. Bodies fell. Crystal shattered. And in the center of it all, where the blast had been strongest, Ven collapsed into 1,000 broken pieces. Admiral Park Tay hit the ground hard. His ears rang. His vision blurred. Smoke filled his lungs, and he coughed, trying to breathe. Around him, chaos ruled. Alien voices screamed in languages he did not understand. Emergency lights flashed red and gold. He forced himself to stand. Bora, he shouted. Hannah Lieutenant Ubora emerged from the smoke, blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead. She was dragging someone, a Melic delegate, whose colors had gone pale and dim. I am here, sir. Where did the blast come from? Before she could answer, a figure stepped out of the shadows. He was human, young, strong. His hands were empty, but his eyes were filled with something cold and broken. Sergeant Namde Tay recognized him immediately. Day had been a soldier once, one of the best. He had fought in the border conflicts on Earth, a terrible war that had killed millions, including Day's entire family. His wife, his children, his parents. All gone in a single night of fire. Day Tay said quietly, What have you done? What someone should have done long ago. Day's voice was flat, empty. They watched us die, Admiral. For 3,000 years, they watched us burn and bleed and suffer. They had the power to help us. They chose not to. He gestured at the ruined hall. Now they know what it feels like. Security forces were rushing in. Now Null soldiers made of sharp crystal. Melic peacekeepers with weapons that glowed. They surrounded Day, ready to kill. Tay held up his hand. Wait, he is a murderer, one of the Null soldiers said. He attacked the assembly. He must die. He is human, Tay replied. He is mine to deal with. He walked toward Day slowly. The young man did not move, did not try to run. He seemed almost relieved that it was over. They left us to die, Day whispered. They do not deserve our mercy. Tay stopped in front of him. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke, his voice soft but steady. No, they do not. Day looked up, surprised. They watched our children starve. Tay continued. They saw our cities burn. They could have helped, and they chose to do nothing. You are right, Day. They do not deserve mercy. He reached out and put his hand on the young man's shoulder. But mercy was never about what others deserve. It is about what we refuse to become. Tears filled Day's eyes. His whole body began to shake. I lost everything, Admiral. Everything. I know. Tay's voice broke slightly. I know, son, and I am so sorry. But this is not who we are. This is not what your family would have wanted. This is not what humanity came here to do. Day collapsed. Tay caught him and held him as he wept, held him, the way a father holds a broken child. The Knoll soldiers watched in confusion. They did not understand. To them, Day was an enemy, a threat, something to be destroyed. But to Tay, he was a man who had lost everything and made a terrible choice. And humans did not abandon their own, even when they fell. Bora approached slowly. Sir, the Knoll delegate. Ven, he is. They are saying he is dying. Tay looked at the scattered pieces of crystal on the ground. Ven's body had been blown apart by the blast. The shards glowed faintly, but the light was fading. Among the Knoll, this was death. Their consciousness lived in their crystal form. When the form shattered beyond repair, they ceased to exist. Tay asked. A Knoll soldier made a sharp sound. His matrix is too damaged. No technology in the Covenant can restore him. Up on the Eternal Dawn, Kim Hannah was already working. She had seen the explosion on the sensors. She had watched Ven fall, and she refused to accept that it was over. Kong Jin, she called to the engineer. I need everything we have on crystal matrix reconstruction. Everything. Jin looked at her like she was insane. We do not even know how Knoll biology works. Then we will learn. Her fingers flew across the console. Pull the medical database. Cross-reference with the scans we took when we first arrived. Find me something. For hours they worked. Hannah and Jin, and Medical Officer Choi Soo, hunched over computers and data streams and alien biology they barely understood. They failed. Again and again they failed. 6 times they thought they had a solution. And 6 times the simulations showed it would not work. On the 7th attempt, Sue found something. The resonance frequency, she said, exhausted but excited. If we can match the original frequency of his matrix, we might be able to rebuild the lattice structure. It is like setting a broken bone but for crystal. Do it, Hannah ordered. They transported down to the surface. The Knoll guards tried to stop them, but Tay waved them through. Human doctors knelt beside the shattered remains of Ven. Using equipment they had built themselves and knowledge they had gained through desperate guesswork, the process took 12 hours. 12 hours of careful work, fitting pieces together, stabilizing the matrix, pouring energy into dying crystal. 12 hours, while the assembly watched in silence, waiting to see what the humans would do. Finally, at dawn, Ven opened his eyes. His body was different now, smaller, patched together with visible seams. But his consciousness was intact. His light was strong. He was alive. Why? He asked, his voice weak. Why did you save me? Sue looked up from her equipment. Her eyes were red from exhaustion. Her hands were burned from handling crystal that was not meant for human touch. Because that is what humans do, she said simply. Ven was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached out with one reconstructed hand and touched Sue's face. Perhaps, he said quietly, we were wrong about your species. Sue smiled. Perhaps you were. In the ruined hall, surrounded by destruction and death, something had changed. The elder races had watched humanity fight and fail and fall for 3,000 years. But they had never seen humans heal. They had never seen them save an enemy who had done nothing to deserve it. And for the first time, they began to understand what humanity truly was. The Great Hall had been rebuilt in 3 days. Not by the Covenant's machines alone, but by human hands as well. Engineers from the fleet worked beside Knoll builders. Human doctors treated alien wounded. Kim Hannah coordinated repair efforts, while Kong Jin designed new support structures for the damaged walls. It was not required. No one had asked them to help. They simply did. But not everyone welcomed humanity's presence. The Vroth Dominion had long opposed the Covenant. They were warriors, conquerors, beings who believed that strength was the only law that mattered. When they learned of the bombing, they saw opportunity. When they learned that a human had been responsible, they saw a weapon, their War Master Krev, stood before the assembly now. He was massive, 3 meters of muscle and bone and hatred. His voice boomed through the hall like thunder. "The humans must be expelled," he declared. "One of their kind attacked this sacred place. They brought violence and death to Cora Prime. This proves what we have always known. Humanity is a plague. They must be cast out before they destroy everything we have built." Murmurs of agreement rippled through some of the delegates. Fear was a powerful thing. The bombing had shaken them. The sight of Venge shattered on the ground had terrified them. And now, Krev was offering a simple solution. Blame the humans and send them away. Admiral Parkte rose to speak. He said. His voice was calm, but there was weight behind every word. A human planted that bomb. A human caused this destruction. Sergeant Namde acted out of pain and anger and grief, feelings that do not excuse what he did, but explain it. He looked at Krev directly. But ask yourself this. Who told Day about the weaknesses in your security? Who gave him the explosives? Who promised him revenge if he would only light the match? Krev's eyes narrowed. Tay turned to the assembly. The Vroth have been trying to destroy this covenant for centuries. They saw an opportunity to use a broken man as a weapon. Day made his choice, and he will answer for it. But he did not act alone. Evidence appeared on the screens. Communications between Krev's agents and human, isolationists on Earth, plans, promises, payment. The truth was undeniable. Krev snarled. This proves nothing. It proves everything. It proves that you feared what humanity would become if we joined this covenant. It proves that you tried to stop us. And it proves that you failed. He turned away from Krev and walked to the center of the hall. 3,000 years ago, you built a seat for humanity. You carved it from stone and marked it with our world. And then you decided we were not worthy to fill it. He looked at each delegate in turn. The beings of crystal and shadow and light, the creatures who had watched Earth for millennia and chosen to do nothing. You watched us struggle. You watched us suffer. You saw our worst moments and judged us by them. But you did not see everything. You did not see the way we held each other in the darkness. You did not see the way we fought for strangers we would never meet. You did not see the way we chose hope when there was no reason to hope. He stopped beside the waiting throne. We survived. Without your technology, without your guidance, without your permission, we crawled out of the mud and looked up at the stars and refused to believe we were alone. And when we finally arrived here, you told us we were not welcome. He placed his hand on the cold stone. This seat was always ours. Not because you gave it to us, but because we earned it. Every plague we survived, every war we ended, every single time we chose to stand up when the universe pushed us down, he sat. The hall went silent. We are not asking for acceptance, Lieutenant, Eubora said, stepping forward with her tablet. On its screen was an image of Earth, small and blue and fragile, floating in an ocean of stars. We are telling you who we are. We are humanity. We break. We bleed. We fail. And we rise. Every single time, the Korath Elder rose. Its voice was like wind through ancient trees. A vote must be called. The question is simple. Does humanity belong among us? One by one, the delegates raised their markers. The Melek voted yes. Sola's colors blazed with warm gold as she raised her hand. The Korath voted yes. The ancient being inclined its shadowed head in respect. Species after species raised their markers. Some hesitated. Some conferred with their councils. But in the end, 11 markers rose. Ven was the last to vote. He had been rebuilt. Pieced together by human hands, saved by people who owed him nothing. His crystal body was smaller now, marked with visible seams where the repairs had been made. But his light was strong. You saved me when you had no reason to, he said slowly. Your doctors worked through the night to heal someone who had watched your people suffer for 3,000 years and done nothing. I asked why, and your doctor said 4 words. He paused. That is what humans do. He raised his marker. Perhaps that is exactly why the seat was always yours. 12 votes. Unanimous. Admiral Park. Tay looked out at the gathered representatives. Beings who had feared humanity for millennia. Beings who had watched and judged and found them wanting. We did not come here to be liked, he said quietly. We came here to be counted. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the circle was complete. Years passed. The covenant changed. Humanity changed it when a new species was discovered broken. Desperate, fighting against extinction, it was humanity that argued loudest for their inclusion. Ambassador Shinera stood before the assembly, her voice ringing through the rebuilt hall. They deserve a chance, she said. Not because they have proven themselves, but because no one should have to. The Null delegate, now called Ven Reborn, tilted his reconstructed form in what humans had learned to recognize as a smile. You've changed us, he admitted. Era shook her head. No. We just reminded you of something you forgot. Compassion is not weakness. It is the only thing that lasts. A new seat was carved. A new world was marked, and humanity made sure that no seat would ever stay empty again. On the bridge of the eternal dawn, now an old ship full of memories, Park Tae watched the ceremony from orbit. He was older now, retired, but he had asked to be here for this moment. Lieutenant Borinal, Captain Boris, stood beside him. We did it, she said softly. Tae smiled. No. We started something. The rest is up to them. He looked down at the planet below where a new species was being welcomed into the Covenant. Where seats that had once been empty were now full of voices. Earth's seat was always empty, he murmured. Acceptance was never sought. Humanity claimed its right. He closed his eyes. We made sure no one else would have to.